hours as a joke. I drew pictures that... Whatever. I knew when I couldn't find a playlist to put that video in that this would turn into a Plague of Gripes series. Gripe balls! Might have to workshop that one. Alright, you want to listen to me rail on Dragon Ball? Let's go. This isn't even 50% of my true power. Topic lead-in. Power levels. They suck. If you want to complain about something in Dragon Ball, this is a good place to start. It's pretty foundational to most problems in the series, along with Toriyama's overall disinterest in writing. It doesn't matter if you're bitching about Caulifla getting Super Saiyan 2, the human characters getting left behind, Frieza coming back as strong as a god, or Goku not winning every fight by going blue and sneezing on enemies. A lot of it comes down to this shit.
2 points of contention, to put it bluntly. Power levels are dumb. That's false and or inaccurate for 2 reasons. So, your statement is that power levels are dumb. So, logically speaking, if you hype up a character, you're saying, okay, he's really strong. He's like this tough guy, right? So, then, logically, you should expect the weakling that doesn't have any physical capability to destroy and beat him. Because, you know, in a narrative, right? If you establish that A guy is stronger than B guy, then A guy should beat B guy. This is just common sense. And, by the way, if power levels are dumb, then, you know, logically speaking, I should go up to Mike Tyson and try to fight him. Because if everyone has the same power, then I should be as strong as Mike Tyson and or a bear in physical combat. But since that's obviously fucking retarded and or inaccurate, you wouldn't do that because logically a bear is stronger than you. And logically Mike Tyson is also stronger than you. So yes, even in the real world, power levels do exist. It's not on the scale of like planets getting destroyed and universes getting destroyed. But there is still a gap of power that exists. You can say what you must, but there is a power gap that exists between different entities in the real world. And then again, this should apply to fiction as well, just at a larger scale. Nonetheless, your point's dumb because it ignores factual logic. Again, under your logic, if power levels don't exist in whatsoever, then I should be able to physically fight a bear. So, that's just retarded.
Should, in theory, be, and why certain scenes may have narrative dissonance as a result, well, that makes sense. But I'm not Seth or Chuck or whatever have you. I'm the guy with the writer mentality, so I'm going to address it as such. Which is bad news for Toriyama, since he famously wrote the whole series on a monthly basis and made the whole thing up as he went along with no planning whatsoever. So, let's talk power levels. Let's kill Trunks, hop in the plot device, create timeline split number 6. Boy, that's another video. And go back in time to the 1980s, where cocaine was king, land sharks were first sprouting from the streets of Japan, and Yu Yu Hakusho was a glimmer in Yoshihiro's ballsack. So, in the original Dragon Ball, the concept of power levels wasn't that much of an issue. Ordinary fighters that didn't know about ki were usually jokes, sure, but that was the premise. It was a gag manga about baby Chinese Wukong Monkey King tilling farmland and delivering milk jugs because he tricked a bipolar supermodel bank robber into living with a registered sex offender and wearing the kind of lingerie a woman puts on when she realizes she married for money and wants a baby from the local pool boy instead, in exchange for punching lessons. It's all you gotta do to make your wish come true. Yeah. So for the vast majority of the front end of Dragon Ball, it was fairly lighthearted, silly, and even the fights were goofy or homages to 70s martial arts films. It wasn't until '89, when I was 7 or 8 or something, that the problem of power levels first appeared. I was a deeply analytical child, so of course I recognized this immediately. This first instance of power level creep that I can identify is Tao Pai Pai, or Mercenary Tao for us godless heathens. Characters get stronger than one another prior to this, but
Nonetheless, first issue being with this entire statement or this entire chunk of the video. And while this is going to be a long way, I'm already 4 minutes in and I have so much to talk about. First point of contention being, you said that Dragon Ball had no issues in regards to power or whatever the fuck you're talking about. So, that premise would mean that Dragon Ball does not have inherent issues with, power scaling, right? There's no problems with that. And then you go on to state how Mercenary Tire was the front line, despite them needing to destroy the Ox King's mountain via Master Roshi's power. So they would have needed a stronger character to do the job because he's stronger. And again, you're saying, oh yeah, there's a power progression, and the only thing that changes is that he got more powerful. Again, that's not any different from what's stated in the show prior. I mean, this is just a more explicit version of that. I mean, we even get it in the same Ox King episode, where Master Roshi explicitly states that Goku is stronger than him, and he did a move that took him 100 years. And as another example, in that same episode, he states out of his two students, Gohan was the better. Again, there's very explicit instances of power scaling and power creep in that arc alone. Nonetheless, you're factually incorrect in that analogy. So, then again, you could just say what you must. Then again, you can say what you must and think that power doesn't exist in the real world, and, I could beat up Mike Tyson, but that's obviously fucking dumb and retarded, so. Yes, power does exist, he's just kinda dumb. And another point of contention is, you state that you were deeply analytical, yet you watched Dragon Ball of all things. One of the worst written shows. Again, this isn't even bringing up the idea of power scaling or what have you. This is just one of the worst written shows in general. But then again, just keep telling us how you're so analytical. And then again, Watch doesn't have like bipolar. It's more of like a ability she has. It's never really explained what it is actually. That's just kind of headcanon on your part.
Everyone is generally in the same power range as long as they understood what Ki was. To be more specific, the problem happens when Tao defeats Goku, leaves him for dead, and Goku realizes that he isn't quote-unquote strong enough to win. This is a phrase that seems to get translated a lot from Japanese, and it applies to basically any situation in which someone needs to improve. Even if the improvement isn't physical at all, it's often said a character needs to get stronger to confront their current obstacle. Some of that comes down to a cultural difference of the concept of self not being cleanly defined between the physical and the non-physical, like it is here in the West. But either way, character progress is often defined in terms of strength. Goku then climbs the tower to get the MacGuffin. He's got to drink the magic plot device water. When characters in Dragon Ball are really far behind in quote-unquote power, and it makes no sense that they'd be able to improve to be on par with other characters, they will often be given what I'll call a power device. That's slang for a Toriyama handjob. Whether it's an old cat, an old slug, or an old Kai, or... I guess most of them are old men that reach deep inside of young boys. But yes, thankfully at this point in Dragon Ball, the water isn't actually a power device. The real objective is to reach the water by getting past the Senin Karin, or Korin, whatever. It's mentioned that it took Roshi 3 years to accomplish this.
Everyone is around the same power, according to him, yet they needed Roshi to destroy the mountain. Was it a mountain? It was whatever it was. But the point being is, he had A power level, and this guy had B power level. He needed the guy with a higher power level to do that action. It didn't just start at Tile. Again, I know I'm reiterating the same point, but it's not just with Tile. It's just shown many times. Even like those one-off animal villains from the early parts of Dragon Ball, they got beat not because Goku was skilled or powerful, but because Goku is much more powerful than the random animal characters, whatever the fuck they're called. Nonetheless, this isn't an issue that started here. You're just trying to make excuses of the series at large. I don't know why, but it started since like episode 1, actually. Bulma had a machine gun. She shot him with the machine gun. Oh, look, he didn't get harmed by the machine gun. Again, that's like the same joke that they do throughout the show. Like, he's this unsuspecting kid. Yeah, he's, like Superman. Again, you don't even get, like, the retarded and blatant comedy that they're trying to pull. It's like the unsuspecting kid joke, where it's like, oh, no, he's just a kid, and he survives, like, machine gun fire and all this shit. Again, you're just mislabeling the point so you can, grandstand how, you made some grand point, like you're somehow a genius, like everyone else doesn't know the same issue. Again, it's not really an issue, it's just something that's really exemplified in Dragon Ball. I mean, that's mostly because it's a fighting show, right? You have to think, like, when you have a fighting show or a show based around fighting, the plots and things that surround said show is going to be about fighting, right? So if you watch a Rocky Balboa movie, it's going to be about boxing. If you watch a episode of, say, Fate, or one of the Fate shows, you're going to get fighting. I mean, I don't know what you expect here. The plot is that of a fighting show, so it's going to be about fighting and their powers or their abilities or whatever. Again, that's just kind of how a fighting show works. I don't know what you're misunderstanding here. I know you might just hate the idea of a show about fighting. Oh man, God help me, can't have that. I mean, there's better shows that have done it better. I'm not saying that's inaccurate or untrue. I'm just saying that is a thing that does exist, and it will continue to exist, because that is a genre that people like. You can think what you must about it, if it's bad or not, but that's just the type of genre Dragon Ball resides in. I mean, it's more closer to a comedy in the original, but it does have a lot of aspects of like a fighting show. Like there's a lot of fighting and action in it. So nonetheless, yes, it has existed. I mean, since the first episode even. So then again, you're just wrong. That's all it is. Like since the first episode, she just fires that machine gun, like a full-on minigun at him, and he just takes it, like no issue. Again, that's the first episode, and you have this huge power difference. First episode alone, but then again, just think what you want. Think what you must. That's what I meant to say, even though it's wrong.
And of course, it takes Goku about 3 days, because Goku is so strong. The water doesn't do anything, it's just normal water, but because Goku ran up a tower a couple times, ate some Zenzu beans, and tickled a pussy, he can now beat the clothes off Tao somewhat easily. What a 3-day weekend that was. Now, the problem I have with this sequence isn't necessarily the time frame. Sometimes winning a fight is just a matter of mentality. A lot can change by just altering your goal of attack. Losing from being too aggressive, and then focusing on counters in the next fight. That sort of thing. But it's apparent with how the fight plays out, that Goku's improvement was mainly physical. Korin trained Goku physically. It wasn't like Goku's later training of being taught to move without ringing a bell, or dodging lightning, or learning the sense ki. It was just ordinary physical training. More to the point, from a narrative point of view, unlike much of the prior parts of the series, absolutely nothing has changed about the nature of how Goku fought Tao. His number just got bigger. He didn't realize the Dodonpa had a weakness, and then tried to think of a strategy to exploit it. He didn't realize Tao was faster than he was, and take steps to try to nullify that advantage. He simply got stronger. We're told that he got better. We don't see it beyond the fact that he wins. Now, I'm not going to list every example of this, point being, it started early. The Tao example was capped off with Goku annihilating the entire Red Ribbon Army, and Roshi declaring that Goku had gotten so powerful that he was now probably out of reach of the rest of them. Sound familiar? He was something like a god now. Toriyama loves to fetishize power development, and have characters state that they're useless compared to Goku. It's Toriyama's only idea for showing the viewer that Goku has made progress. Yet later, Roshi catches up off screen to forfeit his match with Tenshinhan. I guess they're all gods now too. Yay, godhood. Okay. Lots of power devices are used from this point on for various characters, from dodging lightning to King Kai's super gravity pebble to Gohan being man-touched into becoming the strongest character in the series by doing no training at all. It happens a lot. It became a staple of the series that characters would enter an arc in which it is a...
Two issues with this entire sequence. Part 1 would be the sequence of events doesn't really correlate, right? He said the problem I have with this is that it's not technique based. He didn't learn a new technique to counter said technique or whatever. Even though that would be dumb. Like, he learns a perspective that allows him to do that. That would be an interesting turn, I guess. But the way you're describing it sounds like he would just learn a technique or do something that would just be an ass pull, essentially. So, the issue that you're describing is he just trains to get stronger. Which is an issue how? Like martial artists, UFC fighters, boxers. You don't think they do physical training to get stronger in fights that they lose? You don't think they do that? Because they sure in the hell do. Again, that's the thing that happens in real life. When people are in a fight and they say, oh man, I lost that fight, guess I'll go train more so I can get better. I don't know how this is such a hard perspective. And you're saying you like to fetishize character growth in place of actual character development. That isn't true, because there are actual character arcs that happen that have no relation to power development. E.g., Vegeta was an E.g. meaning example if you're dumb. So Vegeta was started off as this arrogant prick, and over time he learned to calm down and learned to become more human. That's an example of a character arc. He starts at A point and he goes to B point. Again, it's probably not the best route because there's a lot of, through lines and things like that, but that's not neither here or there. I'm doing a response to his video, and his response in his video is about the power levels and how they're bad, but, go punch Mike Tyson, let's see how that goes. Because, power levels don't exist, and, physical capabilities, everyone's the same strength. That's why I can go toe-to-toe with a UFC fighter, because that's how it works, right? You just gotta believe you're strong as the other person, and you'll win, right? Just go fight a UFC fighter, because there's no physical differences in different human beings, right? Like trained fighters, people who are actually, trained to fight, I'm beyond that, right? Because I want to. Do you know how dumb that sounds, though? Like, you're saying that real physical training cannot win a fight. That's what you're saying, even though you logically can win a fight off power alone. Again, you're ignoring that. I mean, there's definitely more factors than just power, but power is a definite factor in a fight, in real life and in Dragon Ball. So you could pretend about how it's fetishized through whatever power development you want to pull, but it's not. There is a blatant existence of power discrepancy in real life. I've gave numerous examples thus far. Then again, you just want to, pretend that this is some horrid example because they're using power to describe how strong a character is in terms of another character. Again, this is a fighting show. That's to be expected. I don't know what you're getting at. And I mean, maybe you could say, oh yeah, it should be more technique-based, and then you have a show where there's certain counters. I mean, at that point, it's just D&D, right? So, for example, in Yu-Gi-Oh, they do the same thing. They say, okay, this guy has a water field. Oh man, my monsters can't attack him because they're in the water. What am I going to do? So then they have to use this, like, an ass-pull element to win. They're like, oh yeah, but I have a moon card that can, like, you negate all your water. Right? And then it just becomes an ass pull, right? That's how this, fantasy logic works. So it's like, I have this special ability that allows me to counter your special ability. That's kind of how these type of shows work. The ones he's kind of mentioning anyway. Again, there's an example in, I think, One Piece, where there's this, like, poison guy, right? And there just happens to be this one guy there that has the exact counter to his ability. Again, when you have shows like this, you have to have very specific elements exist in order to counter other very specific elements. And when they display said elements, it's very out of nowhere or an ass pull because it's not established. In a power show or a show about powers, like your own physical capability, that's what I mean by power. You could just get more powerful, right? All you need to do is, physically work out. Again, physical development can happen. Again, unlike with the idea of powers, if you're with one certain power and you all of a sudden have a power now, then it's an ass pull because they didn't have that power before, and then now they just have it so they can win. Again, they did this with Yu-Gi-Oh! With the Moon card, and they also did it with the ground erosion card in Yu-Gi-Oh! DM when Yugi fought Tem. And he said, oh yeah, my god cards aren't affected by your cards, but I'm targeting the ground. Do you see how this type of logic is circular and dumb? It never works whatsoever in any show it's displayed in. And even in Hunter x Hunter, which is like one of the best shows for this, they have to have lines upon lines of exposition explaining how certain abilities work, and it's just so horrid to read. Because I've read the manga, and it's really so much exposition on certain abilities, it gives you a fucking headache. That's why Dragon Ball, by the way, they have Daizenshus or books explaining what abilities do in depth. They do give context as to what they do, but they don't make it so like you have to know every single attribute of said ability. They just give you the information needed for the plot. So, then again, this is just my little tangent about that little bit of the video. Again, a lot of it's incorrect because it's relying on falsehoods. Like I mentioned, physical training can, in fact, win a battle. You just don't like it for whatever reason. Again, that's not your fault. And that's not his fault. He says he wins via power, yet in the same video, he shows a clip of Mercenary Taio dying via his own grenade. So he didn't even beat him via power. He killed himself. Again, so your example's false, according to your own video, because he didn't even beat him. He didn't even kill him, per se. He died via his own attack. So technically, he didn't even beat him. He killed himself. Again, that's so fucking dumb, too, because if you watch your own video, you can see that you're using the clip of him getting killed via his own grenade. So, technically speaking, you are not only wrong, your own video contradicts you. So, if you're saying Ultimate Gohan is the strongest character in the Dragon Ball series, then that means you're including the entire series, which gives me a lot of stronger characters to work with. So technically speaking, you're wrong. I'll provide 3 examples from 3 non-canon spin-offs. First would be Beerus. He is stronger than Ultimate Gohan, very explicitly. Second example would be Omega Shenron. He's stronger than Gohan explicitly. By the way, GT Gohan is stated stronger than Ultimate Gohan because of the guide stated he trained from that point. And third example would be Toa from the Dragon Ball Heroes video game series, in which she massively dominates even Beerus from the Dragon Ball Super Show, whatever the fuck you want to call it. Technically speaking, those characters are stronger than Ultimate Gohan, therefore you are wrong.
Character that is stronger than the prior one. They don't fight any differently. They just have a bigger key number. But to beat the enemy, Goku has to level up his stats, so that his numbers are now bigger than the other guy's numbers, usually by grinding in some new exotic location in the same way that he always has. Power levels. But it isn't until specifically Z, when Toriyama thought he was bookending the series, that's why he was called Z, that power levels actually showed up. Even though Piccolo and Goku were the strongest ever, oh my god, so strong, Raditz shows up and is stronger. By like 4 times too. The funny thing is, Raditz was a worse fighter than either Piccolo or Goku. His techniques were not as realized, he couldn't raise his battle power or focus his ki, and he made tactical errors over and over. But his number was bigger. This shit had Piccolo asking White Jesus, will a Namek liver die, because the Kami can't see us in the deep, dark clouds of the power level projects. This happens a lot in Z. Characters often launch attacks that they don't do anything to other characters. Even if their surprise attacks are well timed, the other guy is just too strong. Alright, hold on. Let's talk about the mechanics of why this shit even happens in this series, to show how dumb this is. It'll take some effort on my part, because Toriyama has not once in the series ever had a Naruto training scene where characters explain the shit that they're doing. The closest we ever got was Gohan quote-unquote training Videl. And the only thing he does there is say, hey, ki exists. And she's like, nah, it doesn't. I'm holding out my hands and shit ain't happening. And then he goes, nah, it totally does. Just do it. Do it, stupid. And she just holds out her hands, and the ki just shows up. And that's your explanation for how everything in Dragon Ball works. There's magic right above your pussy, and you just push it into your fucking hands, you stupid fucking ape. Fuck you! Sorry, in my personal headcanon, since Toriyama never explains anything's mechanics, I imagine ki working sort of like a field around the characters. That glowing shit they always have. When they emit their body heat and the European sirens start going off, that's stated to be their ki radiating from their body. Super Saiyan wastes a lot of ki because its dumb heat siren is too loud or whatever. But the reason their clothes don't get torn up from the slightest punch from these god-tier super guy kicks is because the power they're using to fight with is also covering their bodies. For example, people often complain about them using weighted clothing that only weighs a few pounds, but they can lift hojillions of pounds, right? So why does it affect them at all? Here's my explanation. Their bodies are just normal human bodies. They just know how to use ki. That's the only difference between Mr. Satan and Krillin, other than sex appeal, right? One can use ki. They both have normal human bodies, or slug or Frigidaire bodies, whatever. If they don't use their ki, which Goku often doesn't when he lowers his guard all the time, they seem to be able to be injured just as easily as anyone else. It's why you can say, attempt to kill Goku Black with a bullet by striking when he has no reason to be using much ki. His body isn't being protected or enhanced beyond the limits of a normal human body at that moment, so he's vulnerable to a normal attack. It also explains why Goku can be killed by the love child of Mr. Worry and Slippy Toad. He had his guard down. He wasn't utilizing his ki. That's how it works, in theory, since he never explains it. So, if a normal body is weighed down normally with normal weighted clothing without using ki, when they wrap their bodies in this shit, the weighted clothing will still be effective, because their ki is simply amplifying the natural state of whatever is inside of it. Their bodies and whatever they're wearing or using. It's why their clothes don't get ripped, why weighted gi still restrict their movement, why the Ultra Super Saiyan form slows down their movements, and so on. It's the same reason why Trunks' sword can cut through Frieza, but King Cold doesn't get any effect from it at all. It's not the sword, it's the ki around the sword. That's how ki works, in my head, because Toriyama. So when it comes to characters' attacks, it's the same shit. I always imagined it sort of like a ballistics test. If you have a tank, you can't shoot it with a pistol 1,000,000 times to blow it up. That's what armor is for. You have to fire a shell at it that's hard enough and fast enough to actually penetrate the armor and get inside where all the sweet man flesh and explosive shells are. Sorry, I got a little bit excited. It's all very sexual. It's why armor is angled, sloped, and composited, and so on. An attack has to be strong enough to get through the armor protecting someone in order to inflict any damage. Otherwise, it deals none at all. That's kind of how I imagine these fucking ki numbers work. The bigger your goddamn power level, the stronger a ki field you put around your body, the stronger your armor. So if a weak little dipshit throws a Kienzan at your neck, hey, who cares? Didn't do nothing. It wasn't strong enough to get through. On the flip side, characters in the show can make attacks that are stronger than they are. So if an enemy has a lot of armor, you can make a 105mm shell that you can fire that you're pretty confident can get through that big ass power level. But the thing is, the stronger the attack you have to use, the more it tires you out. That's why characters punch and kick one another. You think, shit, if one Kamehameha does the job, just use that shit all the time. Just keep firing those motherfuckers, right? Just keep pumping in that gas. And don't stop pumping those Kamehamehas until you're sure they're dead. But nah, it's hard work shooting marketing beams. So the goal of a fight is to just wear down your opponent with nice, safe, energy-conservative punches and kicks that are just barely strong enough to put little dents in that armor. That'll wear down their power level, their total ki, their stamina, their sexual energies, and make it easier to get in bigger attacks later on. And if they strengthen their armor so that your punches and kicks do no damage, it actually drains their stamina over time to keep that shit up. So it's ultimately self-defeating.
According to you, all you need to do is get someone off guard to kill them. But according to you as well, is you say characters repeatedly take attacks they don't even see. Like, for example, the aforementioned Nappa example you gave, and the example in Dragon Ball with the machine gun fire. Again, both of which were off guard and easily retained. So that's just false. And false notion number 2, you don't need to have higher power. That's why they specifically made that one bullet. By the way, that's why she was sniping at him. She had a particular bullet which had the capability of harming him. Again, it was a special bullet created specifically to kill him. That's why it was so important that she succeeded, because there was only one bullet. That's why she ran off immediately after, despite knowing she could kill him. Again, you're ignoring context here, just so you can kind of make up this false notion. Then again, there's multiple instances of characters being beyond a certain power threshold and not getting harmed by weaker characters despite being off guard. Again, that's just a thing introduced in Super because it's retarded. And another thing would be, is you could even see in the same example given, same fight, is where they had Sheltsu like kill himself and nothing happened as a result of that, because he was off guard while that happened too. That's another thing. So there's many instances of off guard attacks not working. Another example would be the Kanzon. Krillin thrown a Kanzon at the back of Cell's neck and it didn't do anything. Another example in the story would be when Videl hit Spuvovich in the neck with a kick. Nothing happened because he's stronger. Again, both were off guard too, so your point's fucking wrong. It's just that Super's retarded. And again, even in that same instance in which you mentioned, it's because he was in his base form too. Then again, that would just be a ridiculously powerful laser, but it's said to be a basic ray gun. And that's why the writing's dumb in that particular show. And I mean, in general, DBZ writing's dumb, but then again, you're making an analysis on why it's dumb, and it's completely fucking wrong. And then again, I gave like 5 examples right here, and you said, oh yeah, the way they fight the enemies do not change. Are you forgetting that they blasted Cell with a full-powered Kamehameha, and it did nothing, because he can regenerate. And that was the whole stick there. He couldn't get hit normally, because he regenerates. That was his entire stick. And you're acting like you just kill him normally. Boo's was, he absorbed people, so you have to kind of not get absorbed, or you have to watch your back, because he can throw, like, many pieces of himself that will crawl up to you and absorb you. Again, that's the whole stick with these characters. They all have, like, certain sticks that kind of make them different from one another. Again, you act like there's no qualifying things that make it better. It's just, oh, you're just power, right? You're ignoring the blatant abilities and power sets these characters have, just so you can say, oh yeah, it's just power, even though there's other factors at play even in the series itself. Another example would be Hit from the fucking garbage show. What he does is he has the ability of time. So what Goku does is what's actually pretty intelligent. He makes a move before he attacks, so he predicts the outcome of where he's going to be before he hits him, which is actually an intelligent move instead of saying, oh yeah, he's just more powerful. Again, they do that afterwards because, you know, can't have good writing, right? But nonetheless, your kind of point and or rant on this is kind of dumb because it's blatantly wrong when there's 80 examples of things being to the contrary. And even when Krillin wrote a walk on him, that's what people like to say, which was anime only, not like canon, but I'll address it because it is a valid point. Again, he was sleeping, A, and B, it didn't harm him. He was just kind of shocked at the result of a walk getting thrown at him. No harm done to him whatsoever, though. Again, that's one of the main points people use when they try to defend the laser gun scene. Even though he wasn't harmed via the walk, he just got up because he's like, oh yeah, why do you throw a walk at me? Yeah, you guys just kind of ignore the point of the scene. It was to show that he wasn't some omnipotent god. It was to add stakes to the story. He's like, oh yeah, he can be off guard and still have still be vulnerable. Again, he still has the same amount of durability. That doesn't change anything. It's just that he can be, nearsighted while fighting because he's overconfident in his abilities. That's kind of the whole premise shown in Super itself. Again, they extrapolate it to retarded amounts to where it makes no sense, even in which Z did the same thing, except they didn't make it retarded. They just said, oh yeah, he can be caught off guard, but you have to have capabilities, attack capabilities willing to exploit that weakness. So it kind of did the same point, but it just wasn't retarded. So then again, just continue ignoring the facts presented because you need to make a 30-minute video, am I right?